Okay, so this is the Daf Yomi for April 17th, 2025. This is Daf 9 in Makkos. So here we are at the end of 8. We ended off, I'll read this. Rather, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov said, this Braita is not referring to lashes administered for cursing. Rather, one is flogged in a case where a Jew testified against a Samaritan and a Samaritan testified against a Jew, and he was rendered a conspiring witness. The Gemara asks, does that mean that in the corresponding situation with regard to a Canaanite slave, a slave is flogged in a case where he testified against a Jew and was rendered a conspiring witness? Is a slave eligible to give testimony? Rather, Rav Acha, son of Rav Ika, said, what are we dealing with here? The Jew is flogged due to a slave and a Samaritan, and the slave and the Samaritan are flogged due to the Jew in a case where one struck the other with a blow, and now we're in 9, that does not have the capacity to cause damage worth 1 peruta, meaning basically the smallest coin. As Rabbi Ami says, that Rabbi Yochanan says, although one who strikes another pays damages and is not flogged, if he struck him with a blow that does not have the capacity to cause damage worth 1 peruta, since there is no payment, he is flogged for violating a Torah prohibition. The Gemara comments, and according to this opinion, contrary to those who hold that based on their virtual juxtaposition, Exodus 21, verse 15 and verse 17, or on an analogy between them, the halachot of striking and cursing are identical. We do not liken striking to cursing. Therefore, although one is flogged for cursing another only if the other comports himself as an observant, God-fearing Jew, one is liable for striking another even if the other was a sinner. The Mishnah teaches everyone is exiled due to their unintentional murder of a Jew, and a Jew is exiled due to all of them, except for when it is due to a ger Toshav. And a ger Toshav is exiled due to his unintentional murder of another ger Toshav. The Gemara comments, apparently one may conclude that a ger Toshav is a Gentile, and therefore he is not exiled when he unintentionally kills a Jew. Say the latter clause of the Mishnah, a ger Toshav is exiled due to his unintentional murder of a ger Toshav, indicating that his halakhic status is not of a Gentile, as Gentiles are not liable to be exiled. There is an apparent contradiction between the two clauses in the Mishnah. So Rav Kahana said this is not difficult. Here in the latter clause of the Mishnah, it is in the case of a ger Toshav who killed a ger Toshav that he is exiled. There, in the first clause, it is in the case of a ger Toshav who killed a Jew. In the case described in the first clause, he is not exiled, as his halakhic status is not that of a Jew, for whom the sin of unintentional murder of a Jew can be atoned through exile. There are those who raise the contradiction between two verses. It is written, for the children of Israel, and for the stranger, and for the resident, Toshav among them, shall these 6 cities be for refuge, Numbers 35:15, indicating that a ger Toshav is exiled. And it is written in a previous verse, quote, and the cities shall be for you for refuge, Numbers 35:12, from which it is inferred a refuge for you but not for a ger, indicating that a ger Toshav is not exiled. Rav Kahana said, this is not difficult. Here the verse that indicates that they are not exiled is concerning a ger Toshav who killed a Jew. There, the verse that indicates that they are exiled is concerning a ger Toshav who killed a ger Toshav. So when the Gemara raises a contradiction to the halacha of the Mishnah from a Braita that teaches, therefore a ger Toshav and a Gentile who killed a person are killed, even if they did so unintentionally. The Gemara infers based on the juxtaposition of a ger Toshav and a Gentile in the Braita. The Tana teaches the case of a ger Toshav in a manner similar to the case of a Gentile. Just as with regard to a Gentile, it is no different in a case where he killed one of his kind, a Gentile, and it is no different in a case where he killed one not of his kind, a Jew, as in either case he is executed and is not exiled. So too with regard to a ger Toshav, it is no different in a case where he killed one of his kind. So ger Toshav, and it is no different in a case where he killed one not of his kind, meaning a Jew, as in either case he is executed and is not exiled. So Rav Chisda said, the contradiction between the Mishnah and the Braita is not difficult. It is not difficult. Here the Mishnah is referring to a case where he killed him in a downward motion. There, the Baraita is referring to a case where he killed him in an upward motion. Rav Chisda elaborates, if one Ger Toshav killed another Ger Toshav in a downward motion, which is a case where if the perpetrator were a Jew, he would be exiled, the Ger Toshav also suffices with exile. But if the case where the perpetrator were a Jew, he would be exempt from exile. The Ger Toshav is executed. Rava said to him, and is it not derived by means of an a fortiori inference? To the contrary, if one unintentionally kills another in a downward motion, which is a case where if the perpetrator were a Jew, he would be exiled. The Ger Toshav also suffices with exile and nothing more. But if he killed in an upward motion, which is a case where if the perpetrator were a Jew, he would be exempt from exile, is he killed? Rather, Rava said, the case in the Baraita where a Ger Toshav is killed rather than exiled is where the Ger Toshav who killed another Ger Toshav says that it is permitted to kill the victim. If he killed him unintentionally, he is exiled, in accordance with the ruling in the Mishnah. Abaye said to him, one who says that it is permitted to kill the victim is a victim of circumstances beyond his control, as he was unaware of the prohibition. Why then should he be executed? Rava said to him, that is not a problem, as I say that with regard to one who says that it is permitted, since he intended to kill the other, his action borders on the intentional. The Gemara observes, and Rava and Rav Chisda follow their standard line of reasoning, as is indicated by the fact that it was stated that they disagree in a case of a Ger Toshav who killed a person. If he thought he was killing an animal and it was discovered that it was a person, or if he thought he was killing a Gentile and it was discovered that he was a Ger Toshav, Rava says he is liable to be executed, as with regard to one who says that it is permitted, his action borders on the intentional. So Rav Chisda says he is exempt, as one who says that it is permitted to kill the victim is a victim of circumstances beyond his control. So Rava raised an objection to the opinion of Rav Chisda from which it is written with regard to Abimelech, king of Gerar, who took Sarah, Abraham's wife. And God came to Abimelech in a dream in the night, and he said to him, you shall die for the woman you took, as she is a man's wife. Genesis 20, verse 3. When Abimelech took Sarah, he was under the impression that she was unmarried, as Abraham said that she was his sister. Despite the fact that Abimelech was one who says that it is permitted, he was liable to be executed for his action. What, is it not that he was liable to be executed at the hand of a court composed of people, indicating the one who says that it is permitted is liable? The Gemara rejects that conclusion. No, it means that he was liable to be executed at the hand of heaven, but not by a court. The Gemara adds, the language of the verses is also precise in this regard, as it is written, quote, and I also prevented you from sinning against me, Genesis 20, verse 6, indicating that it was a sin vis-a-vis God and was not in the jurisdiction of a court of men. The Gemara asks, and according to your reasoning, that based on the formulation of the verse, one concludes that it was a sin exclusively vis-a-vis God, where Joseph says to Potiphar's wife, quote, and how can I perform this great evil and sin to God? Genesis 39, verse 9. May one also infer that it was a sin vis-a-vis God and not vis-a-vis man? Joseph is referring to idolatry, which is punishable by execution according to the Noahide laws as well. Rather, in that case, it means that although he performed a sin vis-a-vis God, his judgment is given over to the ruling of man. Here too in the verse about Abimelech, it can be explained that although he performed a sin vis-a-vis God, his judgment is given over to the ruling of man. There is no proof from this verse with regard to the status of one who says that it is permitted to perform a transgression. Abaye raised an objection to the opinion of Rava from the reply of Abimelech. Will you even slay a righteous nation? Genesis 20, verse 4. God appears to accept Abimelech's contention as he did not respond by calling him wicked, indicating the one who says that it is permitted to perform a transgression is a victim of circumstances beyond his control. The Gemara rejects that understanding. There, the reason for the rejection of Abimelech's contention is as they responded to him from heaven. Quote, and now restore the man's wife, as he is a prophet. Genesis 20, verse 7. This Gemara questions that response. Is it the wife of a prophet that is returned, and the wife of one who is not a prophet is not returned? Rather, the explanation is as Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says, that Rabbi Yonatan says, this is what God is saying to Abimelech. Quote, and now restore the man's wife. Genesis 20, verse 7. In any case, whether or not he is a prophet. And as for that which you said, quote, will you even slay a righteous nation? Didn't he say to me, she is my sister? Genesis 20, verses 4 and 5. Claiming that you are a victim of circumstances beyond your control and exempt from punishment, that is not a valid claim. He is a prophet, and it is from you that he learned to conduct himself in that manner. With regard to a stranger who comes to a city, one asked him about the matters of eating and drinking, whether he's hungry or thirsty. Does one ask him, is that your wife, or is that your sister? Abraham understood from this line of questioning that you are suspect with regard to abducting women, and that is the reason that he introduced Sarah as his sister. Therefore, you are liable to be executed for her abduction. The Gemara comments, from here it is derived that a descendant of Noah, a Gentile, is executed for a capital offense, even if he says that it is permitted, as he should have learned that it is prohibited, and he did not learn. So the onus is on learning. Now a new Mishnah. The Mishnah says, a blind person who unintentionally murdered another is not exiled. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says he is exiled. The enemy of the victim is not exiled, as presumably it was not a completely unintentional act. Rabbi Yoshi says, not only is an enemy not exiled, but he is executed by the court, because his halakhic status is like that of one who is forewarned by witnesses not to perform the action, as presumably he performed the action intentionally. Rabbi Shimon says, there is an enemy who is exiled and there is an enemy who is not exiled. This is the principle. In any case where an observer could say he killed knowingly, where circumstances led to the assumption that it was an intentional act, the enemy is not exiled, even if he claims that he acted unintentionally. And if it is clear that he killed unknowingly, as circumstances indicate that he acted unintentionally, he is exiled, even though the victim is his enemy. Okay, back to the Gemara. The Gemara, apropos the dispute in the Mishnah between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir with regard to a blind person, the sages taught, it is written that one is exiled to a city of refuge if he killed another without seeing, Numbers 35:23, indicating that the reference is to one who has the capacity to see. This serves to exclude a blind person. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says, on the contrary, the term without seeing serves to indicate a blind person. So the Gemara elaborates, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda? It is, as it is written with regard to those who are exiled, quote, and as one who goes with his neighbor into the forest, Deuteronomy 19, verse 5, which is stated in general terms, applying even to a blind person. The phrase, quote, without seeing, comes and excludes a blind person from this halakha. So Rabbi Meir interprets the verse differently. Quote, without seeing serves to exclude a blind person, and, quote, without knowledge, Deuteronomy 19, verse 4, also serves to exclude a blind person. This is an example of a restrictive expression following a restrictive expression, and there is a hermeneutic principle that restrictive expression following a restrictive expression serves only to amplify the halakha and include additional cases. In this case, it includes a blind person in the halachot of exile as well. The Gemara asks, and how does Rabbi Yehuda respond to that derivation? The Gemara answers that Rabbi Yehuda says that the phrase, quote, without knowledge comes to exclude one with intent. That is, one who had intent to kill an animal and who killed a person. From the halakha of exile, Rabbi Yehuda interprets the two restrictive expressions as excluding two unrelated cases from the halakha of exile, and therefore the principle of a restrictive expression following a restrictive expression serves only to amplify is not relevant to this case. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Yoshi says an enemy is executed because his halakhic status is like that of one who is forewarned. The Gemara asks, but why is an enemy executed? The witness did not actually forewarn him. The court administers corporal punishment only to a defendant who was forewarned. The Gemara answers, the Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yoshi, son of Rabbi Yehuda, as it is taught in Braita that Rabbi Yoshi ben Rabbi Yehuda says, one who is devoted to the meticulous observance of mitzvot, so a chaver, does not require forewarning for the court to administer corporal punishment to him, because fundamentally the obligation to issue forewarning was established only to distinguish between unwitting and intentional actions. So the presumptive status of a chaver is that one who knows the halakha. Therefore, his action is presumed to have been intentional. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Shimon says, there is an enemy who is exiled and there is an enemy who is not exiled. The Gemara adds, it is taught in Braita, in what circumstances did Rabbi Shimon say that there is an enemy who is exiled and there is an enemy who is not exiled? He said that in a case where the rope snapped and the object attached to the rope fell and killed a person, he is exiled, as it appears to be an accident. But if an object was displaced from his hands, he's not exiled, as presumably he loosened his grip until it fell. The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught in Braita that Rabbi Shimon says one is never exiled unless his trowel with which he is working was displaced from his hand? As Rabbi Shimon stated that halacha without distinguishing between friend and enemy, therefore the apparent contradiction between a case where the rope snapped, according to the first Braita, and a case where the rope snapped, according to the second Braita, is difficult. The apparent contradiction between a case where the object was displaced according to the first and a case where the object was displaced according to the second is difficult. The Gemara answers, the apparent contradiction between a case where the rope snapped according to the first Braita and a case where the rope snapped according to the second is not difficult. This case in the second Braita is referring to a friend of the victim, and presumably if the rope snapped, it is considered a case of circumstances beyond his control, and he is exempt from exile. In that case, in the first Braita is referring to an enemy of the victim. In that case, although the presumption is that the act was not intentional due to his enmity toward the victim, it is also not assumed to be the result of circumstances that were completely beyond his control. Therefore, he is exiled. The apparent contradiction between a case where the object was displaced, according to the first Braita, and a case where the object was displaced according to the second Braita, is not difficult. As this case in the first Braita is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who ruled in Mishnah 7b that if the blade of one's axe was displaced from its handle and flew through the air and killed a person, he is exempt from exile in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. In that case, in the second Braita, is the opinion of the rabbis, meaning the majority, who rule that in that case the person yielding the axe is exiled in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Okay, back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, where are the unintentional murderers exiled? They were exiled to cities of refuge, to 3 cities that were in the east bank of the Jordan, and to 3 cities that were in the land of Canaan, Eretz Israel. As it is stated, 3 cities shall you give beyond the Jordan, and 3 cities shall you give in the land of Canaan. They shall be cities of refuge. Numbers 35:14. The Mishnah comments, until the 3 cities of refuge that were in Eretz Israel were selected, an unintentional murderer would not be admitted to the 3 that were in the east bank of the Jordan, even though the latter 3 were already selected by Moses. See Deuteronomy 4:41. As it is stated, 6 cities of refuge shall they be, Numbers 35:13, from which it is derived that they do not become cities of refuge until all 6 of them admit unintentional murderers as one. Okay. The Mishnah continues, and roads were aligned for them from this city, that is, all cities, to that city. They would pave and straighten the access roads to the cities of refuge, as it is stated, prepare for you the road and divide the borders of your land, which the Lord your God causes you to inherit into 3 parts, that every murderer may flee there. Deuteronomy 19, verse 3. The court would provide unintentional murderers fleeing to a city of refuge with 2 Torah scholars, due to the concern that perhaps the blood redeemer, a relative of the murder victim, seeking to avenge his death, will seek to kill him in transit, and in that case the scholars, will talk to the blood redeemer and dissuade him from killing the unintentional murderer. So Rabbi Meir says, the unintentional murderer also speaks midaber on his own behalf to dissuade the blood redeemer, as it is stated, and this is the matter or devar of the murderer, who shall flee there and live, Deuteronomy 19, verse 4, indicating that the murderer himself speaks. Rabbi Yoshi Bar Yehuda says, initially everyone who killed another unintentionally or one who killed another intentionally would hurry and flee to the cities of refuge, and the court in his city would send for him and would bring him from there to stand trial. For one who was found liable to receive the death penalty in court for unintentional murder, the court would execute him. And for one who was not found liable to receive the death penalty, that is, if they deemed that the death occurred due to circumstances beyond his control, they would free him. For one who was found liable to be executed, the court would restore him to his place in the city of refuge, as it is stated, and the congregation shall judge between the murderer and the blood avenger, and the congregation shall restore him to his city of refuge that he fled there. Numbers 35:24-25, indicating that he had been in a city of refuge before his trial. So the Gemara now says, the sages taught, Tanu Rabbanan, Moses designated 3 cities of refuge in the east bank of the Jordan, and corresponding to them, Joshua designated 3 cities of refuge in the land of Canaan, and the cities were aligned like 2 rows of vines in a vineyard. In Eretz Yisrael there was Hebron in Mount Judea, corresponding to Bethzera in the wilderness, Shechem in Mount Ephraim, corresponding to Ramat in Gilead, and Kadesh in Mount Naphtali, corresponding to Golan in Bashan. From the term, and you shall divide, Deuteronomy 19 verse 3, it is derived that the 3 cities in Eretz Yisrael will serve as 3 Meshulashim, lines of demarcation, dividing the length of land into 4 equal parts in a manner that the distance from the southern border of Eretz Yisrael to Hebron, to the southernmost city of refuge, will be like the distance from Hebron to Shechem, and the distance from Hebron to Shechem will be like the distance from Shechem to Kadesh, and the distance from Shechem to Kadesh will be like the distance from Kadesh to the northern border. The Gemara questions the distribution of the cities. Why were there 3 cities designated on the east bank of the Jordan where 2.5 tribes resided, and 3 cities designated in Eretz Yisrael where more than 9 tribes resided? Abaye said, in Gilead, which is located on the east bank of the Jordan, murderers are common. And that is the end of Daf 9. Thanks for watching.